From the nation's capital, Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. A weekly discussion about the federal issues most important to Nevada. And now, from Washington, D.C., here's Marilee Joyce.
Good day to you. I'm Marilee Joyce, and this is Eye on Washington. It's the only statewide Nevada news program produced in Washington, D.C. Every week, Eye on Washington takes you straight to Capitol Hill for a discussion with Nevada's delegation and other leaders about the matters that matter to you. Today's topic, not everybody was at the beach or grandma's over the summer. Let's find out how one Nevada leader spent his summer break serving you. And he is my guest today, of course, Nevada U.S. Congressman Mark Amodei. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you, Marilee.
Appreciate it. 72 state events in 6 weeks. While many of us vacationed and relaxed, one of us was working overtime. And today on Eye on Washington, we'll learn what my guest learned from you during his dozens of town halls and other state events. And we'll learn how he takes your comments and concerns to Capitol Hill and often uses them as he prepares bills to introduce and fight for on your behalf. Well, when you think of congressional members, you likely imagine them here on the Hill, voting or speaking on the floor of Congress or maybe in committee. But for many of them, a lot of that work takes place there in the state as they meet with you. There are town halls, which bring together larger groups of citizens concerned about a certain topic, like veterans or seniors. There are meetings with local agency leaders, like county commissioners or city council persons, and tours of facilities and visits for progress updates on major projects that have federal support. And Congressman, I thought this was a good topic for us to look at today, because I doubt our viewers and listeners are really aware of just how much you do here originates from what you learned there.
Yeah, well, you know, you're hired by about 750,000 people to be their advocate, if you will, their representative here for federal legislative issues on the House side. And so I think a pretty significant part of that is finding out what's on their minds, following up on stuff you're working on, you know, basically so you can be the voice and the advocate for what the things are on the top half of their radar screens.
You know, you reportedly traveled more than 3,000 miles and met with 72 groups and organizations in about a month, right? And this gal's feeling a little unproductive. I did take 5 weeks off this summer. I split it up and stuff, but I spent a lot of time watching, you know, Lifetime Movie Network and stuff. I didn't kind of match your schedule, but your schedule reminds me in a way a little bit of former U.S. Senator Richard Bryan. He used to do this summer rural tour every August. How important is this summer work to you, to what you get done here?
Well, you've hit it right in the middle of the driveway there in terms of, yeah, the work that most people see is done on the floor, in the House, in committee, stuff like that. But quite frankly, time in the district when you're attempting to represent those folks is a very precious commodity. And so we've always tried to maximize that in terms of so we're actually on the ground, face to face, in the same room with whoever it is, getting an idea of what's going on so that you have a good solid base for going and working those issues when you come back here.
Sizes of groups. I'm imagining some are just, well, obviously when you're meeting with some of the top leaders, it might just be a one-on-one thing, but maybe some of the town hall things are quite large.
Yep, it goes from one-on-one to a few hundred.
You know, in your September newsletter, and you can check that out at amodei.gov under e-newsletter, it starts with your saying that, quote, August work period gives you the opportunity to, quote, discuss the work we're doing in Washington and hear directly from the Nevadans we serve. So you learn from them things that you maybe make bills, create bills for once you're back here, and you also get to tell them the results of those bills and what they mean to them.
You know, they call the House the people's house, and so, I mean, I think that's an appropriate description. And so if you're going to be doing, you know, the public service for people legislatively, I just think there's no substitute for a strong direct communication foundation for that.
3,000 miles. You know, help or remind our statewide viewers and listeners the mile area of your district, how large it is, and what it's like to, in 1 month, travel 1,000 miles and meet with 72 different groups.
Well, you know, first of all, you have to like your pickup truck because you spend a lot of time in it. The district doesn't lend itself to flying in here or flying in there. But I mean, that's part of it.
Were you actually driving in a pickup truck?
Yep. 86 GMC, fire engine red. My first new truck. It's aging much better than I am. But anyhow, you know, that's actually the most efficient and effective way to travel, so that's what you do. A lot of time on Interstate 80, a lot of time on US 50 heading east from Carson in both of those directions, a lot of time in Reno too, back and forth. So it's just, I refer to it as Nevada's original congressional district.
You know, it isn't just traveling around and showing up at certain town halls. Your staff is very involved in coordinating all of this long in advance, correct? I mean, it's a lot to put together.
They do that, but also we rotate the whole DC staff back in August for a week at a time so that they're interacting directly with people that they're working with too. So it's not like, hey, I wonder what's going on back in DC. It's like basically the whole office in one form or another, along with the Reno and the Elko offices. The DC office moves to Nevada, if you will, on a rotating basis for the whole month too, so that we've got everybody's feet are on the ground and their hands are touching what they're working on.
Excellent. And when we return, a handful of concerns he was able to address back home over the summer and what he's doing about them here now. We're going to find out right after this.
You're watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, brought to you by Caesars Entertainment, the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, NV Energy, Jim Marsh Automotive and Body Shop, the Rogich Communications Group, and Renown Health.
I have 3 tests next week. I'm going to be studying all weekend. Ugh. Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together. Oh yeah, that sounds good. What time? I work until 6. Okay, sounds good. Just text me after. Okay. No!
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up.
And look out for each other.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
I got my own iPod Touch and used my dad's login to get on gambling sites. Poker is the best, but I'm losing a lot. Since I'm too young to play, they're not allowed to keep the money and my dad won't find out. That's right, isn't it?
Unsafe sleep conditions cause serious injury and even death to infants. Never sleep with your baby on a sofa, in a chair, or in an adult bed. Protect the baby you love from becoming a tragic statistic. The only safe place for your baby to sleep is alone, on its back, in a crib, and in your room. For more information, visit cribsforkids.org. That's cribsforkids.org.
And welcome back to Eye on Washington, our look at one congressman's very busy summer break and what he's doing with what he learned from you all while home. He is my guest today, of course, Nevada U.S. Congressman Mark Amodei. Well, let's spend the remainder of today's program discussing a few examples of issues the congressman dealt with during that August work period. In his September e-newsletter, the congressman tells us that a, quote, mission of his Nevada meetings and events is to, quote, ensure we're doing everything possible to take care of the home front by conducting vigorous oversight and making sure we're up to speed on any important projects and developments. Last summer, perhaps nowhere was that mission more crucial than concerning wildfires. You may recall that last July, the Martin Fire quickly became the largest single fire in Nevada history, causing massive destruction to grazing areas and sage hen habitat. The blaze stretched all the way from Humboldt County to Elko County and burned nearly 500,000 acres of land before it was fully contained. Additionally, at the time of the newsletter's release, the Sugarloaf Fire had burned nearly 250,000 acres of land and is 97% contained since it was discovered on August 17th. In light of these devastating wildfires, the congressman and his staff met with representatives from local, state, and federal agencies to discuss the best ways to improve preparedness and prevent the threat of wildfires. And Congressman, I thought it was important to start with this most serious issue that you dealt with during your break. I know that you met with groups including reps from USDA, the Cattlemen's Association, Ag Department, BLM, Nevada Farm Bureau, Wildlife Division, etc. What are you doing with what you learned?
Well, first of all, we're trying to get all the information about Nevada's resources in terms of our vast open areas out of silos and having everybody know what's in the game. So we wanted to do two things, is sensitize everybody to the other agency's mission, but the next part of that was to say when you burn an area, and you've got the acreage correct, when you burn an area about the size of Rhode Island in 30 days, with the FEMA folks, it's like, hey, that's a big deal for us. Now, the good news is it didn't burn somebody's house down. We didn't hurt many people or anything like that. But quite frankly, that resource is phenomenally important to us, sure, even though it's not populated. There's grazing, there's mining, there's recreation, there's energy. There's all of those things which, quite frankly, have a huge value to us in Nevada. And so we're trying to get them a little off of the urban standard and say, you know what? 800,000 acres in 30 days is a big deal anywhere, whether there's people there or not. Sure. So that's what we're working on now.
Your goal, you wrote, was to discuss potential improvements to our current prevention and restoration efforts. What are some examples of how these agency reps said things need to change?
Well, quite frankly, when you've got, for instance, BLM and Forest Service talking about fuels management money to protect sage hen habitat, to just make sure that the fires don't get as big as they are, because they're going through areas that have had no management for fire minimization, if you will. But then also when you talk to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which spends money on grazing issues, water rights development, stuff like that, it's like, you know, it's just one of those things where we felt there was a need to get everybody in the same room and talking to each other. And I'm not saying anybody's bad or doing anything wrong, but there's a tendency to just get focused in your lane, and it's like there's other roads that are right alongside you where, quite frankly, I think a little bit of communication could make those dollars go longer and make those missions get accomplished better.
You know, in related news, I saw that after these meetings, you requested a meeting with FEMA officials here in D.C. Because Nevada was denied assistance by the agency following the Sugarloaf Fire. What's the update on that?
Well, we had a briefing from the folks at the federal level in my office here in D.C., and then last Monday I was down at Region 9 headquarters in Oakland talking to those people about these issues. So now we're going to go back to the D.C. people and say, quite frankly, when we look at your regulations that were done pursuant to the statute which allows this, I don't see anything which basically allows discrimination against those areas which are not urban in nature. So we're looking basically to make them a little more comprehensive in evaluating where the fire burned and what the true economic impacts are.
And I know the ultimate goal, too, is to ensure that state officials are equipped with the tools and information they need to apply for full recovery assistance when these types of disasters occur. What are some updates there?
Well, I think, quite frankly, as a result of this, the FEMA folks have already started looking at their policies with respect to the Great Basin. So it's not just a Nevada thing, it's an Intermountain West thing also. But it's one where we're going to basically encourage them to continue to do that and perhaps update how they look at things like that.
Okay, when we return. You know what else doesn't take a day off in the summer? The crucial need for a robust and growing state economy. Do his visits home lead to efforts to grow dollars in the state and in your pocket? We're going to find out next.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, the only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Merrilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Merrilee Joyce, Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
When you think RTC, what comes to mind? How about jobs? RTC road projects bring thousands of jobs to Washoe County, expanding and connecting northern Nevada, growing our local economy, providing a more secure future for our residents and their families. So when you think jobs, think RTC, your RTC, the RTC of Washoe County.
Here in Nevada, opioid overdoses have killed more than 2,800 people and led to more than 30,000 visits to the emergency room since 2010. I've spoken to many families who have felt the tragic effects of opioid addiction, losing friends and loved ones. Opioid abuse alters a person's brain, leading to addiction. If there's even a chance of abuse, you should seek help immediately. Go to healthierNV.org for information and resources. If we work together, we will win this battle.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
Problems, the ones nobody talks about at cocktail parties. We go looking for them. No matter the obstacles, no matter the odds, we surround a community's most critical problems, and we fight. United Way fights for the health, education, and financial stability of every person in every community. Will you?
We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
And welcome back to Eye on Washington, our discussion of my guest's summer break, non-break, and what he's doing with what he learned back home. We've been visiting with him, Nevada U.S. Senator Mark Amodei. Remember back in grade school when you were invited to write a paper on how you spent your summer vacation? Well, my guess's several papers on his month off might take the form of legislation based on what he learns during those town hall and other events we've been discussing. Aside from the fire issue, another top focus of these gatherings is your and the state's economic well-being. For instance, he meets with leaders about public lands matter that throughout Nevada and very often in the rural areas he represents impact economic growth. Or maybe you've seen him at a ribbon cutting or other new business welcoming event. Oftentimes these gatherings are the culmination of his efforts on the Hill to obtain federal funding for things like transportation, clean energy, or projects or affordable housing projects, to name a few. Projects that bring jobs and boost the state economy. Or maybe you saw him speaking at the annual Lake Tahoe Summit, updating Nevadans on the many years-long effort to protect our Jewel of the Sierra, a big tourist destination that brings big dollars to the state. And Congressman, you might not have meetings at home that focus solely on the economy, but still, much of what you meet about often does impact it, at least indirectly. And an example is a lands bill you introduced in June that just passed the Resources Committee. You said it'll spur economic development in Story, Lincoln, and White Pine counties. So you often learn about, say, the land needs when home, for instance.
Yep. You know, Nevada, with the federal estate as large as it is in the state, 85-ish%, something like that, every city or town, if it wants to grow or encourage any sort of industry outside the existing town limits, you're talking about federal land. Even Las Vegas, the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act. So that's one of those areas where, quite frankly, you have to keep up. You can never say mission accomplished. And so that bill was one that basically updated 3 different lands bills that had been around for a couple of decades, some of them, or a little less, for others, but still things where it's like, okay, we've learned this, we've learned that, and they are truly technical corrections, not, hey, we're going to give you more ground or we're going to change the whole deal, where it's like you change some dates to extend the application of some of them longer. There's fuels management in some of them, so it's got a nice mix of resource issues as well as land management issues.
You know, speaking of the economy, I've seen statements from your office about how the recent tax cut has helped Nevada. What did you learn from businesses, business leaders, and also those working for them about the impact of the tax cut on the state's economy?
Well, I think first of all, it was a mindset where it's like, you know, that there'd been concern at the local, state, and even national policy levels where people are concerned about what it costs to do business, and that affects what kind of health insurance they can provide, how much they're paying their folks. So this reduction in their exposure to the feds, at least, was something that really energized folks in terms of spending more money on equipment, on employees, whether that's raises or more employees. So all across the spectrum, and it's had that effect of, quite frankly, our number is for the median average in the state, which is around 63, 64,000, it's put $3,000 a year back into those people's pockets to do with as they please.
Nice. You know, to get back to the big point, a lot of what you do here results from what you learn there, and often your focus is jobs, isn't it?
Well, it is, and quite frankly, you look at all aspects of what affects private industry, that's who provides half the health care insurance for people in Nevada. They need to do well if we want them to keep doing those things. So it's all kind of connected, and you have to kind of keep your target moving.
And again, expanding on what you just said a moment ago, speaking of jobs, this isn't about summer work, but I know you've been speaking a lot on how the state economy is expanding, and that in your district too, residents saw a median increase income of 5.2% since the tax reform, correct?
Yep. And so when you look at all that stuff, and my big concern now is housing costs, to be honest with you. We're getting good jobs that pay a living wage, but it's getting harder and harder to find a place to live, even for those people that are making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year. So that's at the top of our economic health screen right now.
What else about your summer work relates to growing the state economy?
Well, I think healthcare is something that always impacts on that, because quite frankly, if you get $3,000 more in your check and it costs you $4,000 more to maintain your health insurance, that's a problem. So we spent a lot of time meeting with state officials, Heather Korbaluk, folks in the federal clinics, hospital associations, all that, to make sure that we know exactly where they're at and where we need to try to provide them some help. Immigration's another one where, quite frankly, 25% of the population of the state is Hispanic. Not because they're a special interest group, 25% is a major deal in any equation. So that has a major impact too on how the state's doing.
Absolutely. And when we return, your current top concerns and needs. From those town halls and one-on-ones, what did the congressman learn and how is he using it to help you? That's next.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Merrily Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Merrily talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Merrily Joyce. Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
I got my own iPod Touch and use my dad's login to get on gambling sites. Poker is the best, but I'm losing a lot. Since I'm too young to play, they're not allowed to keep the money and my dad won't find out. That's right, isn't it?
Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together. Just text me after. Okay. No!
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up.
And look out for each other.
Where does the flu come from? I mean, we know it comes from the influenza virus, but how does it get to you or your child? The fact is, the flu virus is everywhere during flu season. And the best way to protect yourself and your family is with a flu vaccine. Getting vaccinated is easy and way better than getting the flu. Find the clinic location nearest you at immunizenevada.org.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
And it is time for the closing segment of today's Eye on Washington. We've had as our guest today Nevada U.S. Congressman Mark Amodei. Congressman, fire prevention, new highways, clean water plants, lots of huge things that you meet and talk about while you're back home. And that's so important, but at least as crucial to you, I know, are some of the smaller things you learn from each constituent that you get an opportunity to talk with. What are some top concerns you found out about while home, and what are you doing about them here?
Well, we call them projects, but during those meetings or whatever, somebody comes up and says, hey, I've got an issue with the VA, whether it's claims or whether it's, getting into the hospital or the clinic or something like that. We have a full-time staff member, Tracy Spears in Reno, so we get things that they're like, hey, Tracy, can you give this person a call to see what the story is and how we can help them with that? So we get a lot of veterans input on stuff where we kind of need the system to pay attention to them. We do Social Security stuff, same thing where people come up. Other issues where they've got something pending with an agency, any of the federal government agencies, where you give them a call and say, hey, what's going on? We're working on Job Corps issues and stuff like that, so all of it.
It's been several years now since things have been getting better since that horrible recession that Nevada and the nation experienced. But housing, I'm sure, is still a major concern for some.
Well, and we're working with the Department of Treasury on enterprise zones, which are in western Nevada. There's some in Lyon County out there by TRI and some of those other developments. So it's kind of a moving target. You never set healthcare down. You never set veterans down. So it's Chamber of Commerce issues, the whole 9 yards.
Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
If someone wants to reach out to you, amodei.gov.
Yes, ma'am.
Dub.
Happy to do it.
All right. Thanks for being here today. That does wrap up today's Eye on Washington. I hope you'll join us next time for another look at federal matters that matter most to you in Nevada. In the meantime, though, we are always here for you, providing all the federal news Nevadans need to know. Just go to our website, joycecommunications.com. While you're there, check out all the federal news that impacts Nevada. Like us on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, catch up with any shows you may have missed on our YouTube page. Thanks for joining us today on Eye on Washington. I'm Marilee Joyce in Washington, D.C. Have a good day.
Thank you for watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce airs statewide in Nevada solely due to the generosity of our sponsors. Can your company help us continue our mission to remain Nevada's top source of federal news? If you can help us help Nevadans, please visit joycecommunications.com/WordPress/EOW sponsors and join us today. That's joycecommunications.com/WordPress/EOW sponsors.